I was imagining that Robby's was a drowning man on his way to his drowning. And as the shift progresses, the water levels continually rising. And then when we get into this scene, this is the moment where, in my mind, the water was over my head, rising beyond my ability to stay on top of it. And the aggregate emotion that that brought up of not being able to control it or compartmentalize it was sort of the fuel that I had kept kindling for the last calendar year until we shot this scene.
Did you call her parents?
They'll give the number to our social worker who will contact them very soon.
I got their daughter killed.
This is not your fault.
So we can stop right off the bat, and I can give you some context for how we got into this moment. This room in itself is sort of a loaded environment for Robby because this was the room where he took his mentor, Dr. Adamson, off ECMO 5 years earlier, which ended in his dying. And it's a trauma that Robby really hasn't dealt with, that he's been sort of revisiting in the form of flashbacks all day long as the day has triggered him. And now he finds himself back in this room where he's with his sort of pseudo stepson, but really the only person that he has any kind of personal relationship with at this point in his life. And he was unable to save his girlfriend who died earlier from a gunshot wound at this concert. And now he's against hospital policy, allowing his pseudo stepson into the morgue room to see his girlfriend's body for the first time. And he's about to absorb the displaced anger over her death that this kid is feeling. So, okay, let her rip.
I mean, this is what you do.
I tried. I really tried. We all did. If this had been any other day,
If
man.
it'd been any other day, what the does that mean? Any other day, what, you would have saved her life?
Yes, no, I don't know. I don't know. We're getting slammed up there. We've had dozens of shooting victims. You've seen it.
So all day long, I was imagining that Robby's was a drowning man on his way to his drowning. And as the shift progresses, the water levels continually rising. And then when we get into this scene, this is the moment where, in my mind, the water was over my head, rising beyond my ability to stay on top of it. And the aggregate emotion that that brought up of not being able to control it or compartmentalize it was sort of the fuel that I had kept kindling for the last calendar year until we shot this scene. Every day, whether I was at work or not, I would just sort of touch in with this moment, knowing that it was coming, and say, "Is it there? Yeah, it's there. Okay, the fire's still lit." But I wouldn't let it pop until this day. And today, that day when we went to work to shoot that scene, I was so excited to get this feeling off of my chest at last, because I'd been sort of working it for so long that there was a masochistic element of excitement at what was going to happen when I finally let it go. And I didn't really know what it was going to feel like. I just wanted it to just come out. And this is how it came out.
We've saved as many people as we have is a fucking miracle.
But you didn't save Leah.
No, I didn't. And I don't know how many people I've helped today, but I can tell you every other person who has died. There was a man named Mr. Spencer who died in front of his children, and an 18-year-old who was brain dead from a fentanyl overdose, and a guy with a heart condition, and a little girl who drowned trying to save her sister. And I'm gonna remember Leah long after you've forgotten her. I'm sorry. Sorry, you gotta go, man.
It's over. Now it's done. Now he said too much. He said the thing he should have said out loud. That to me is when you say, and it's interesting because in reciting those names, I remember thinking that's why he remembers them. He wants to give them the dignity of memory. And when they get so numerous that you can't give them that dignity and that specificity or individuality any longer, it's overwhelming. And that's the psychic break that he's trying to hold all this in his head, all these people, and he can't for his own survival. And this is where it all just crumbles.
Wait, Robby, Robby, wait.
Put him back in his bed, please.
Just, I couldn't catch my breath. Like I kept sobbing and I couldn't get the intake to sob more. It just kept leaving me. And as it was leaving me, I just kept crumbling down. And as it was great. As it was, I was thinking to myself as I'm going, I'm like, okay, A camera's there, B camera's there. This is going to look so good. It was extremely cathartic. You know, it was, you know, there are days when you go to work and you're presented with a challenge that is intimidating enough to other people where they spend most of their morning going, "Hey man, are you ready for today?" I don't know, how are you gonna do it? So are you gonna like, cry a lot? And you just feel their projected anxiety of like, holy I can't. I don't know what I would do if suddenly the entire thing was focused on me in the moment, and I had to be the one to deliver at the highest level you can deliver it. I look at those days and I think, oh man, I love that I get to be in this position. I feel so honored and grateful that this is what I get to do for a living. That it's sort of like being a pro athlete at the end of the game and the clock's ticking down. You're like, no, I want the ball. I'm not afraid of taking this shot. I want to take this shot. This is sort of what I've been trained and preparing for. So it's more often than not, you don't get these opportunities. And you watch somebody else do them and think about how you would do it better. Which I'm sure there were more than one or two people on set doing that day. But I felt pretty good about it. The one thing that I added in episode 14 on the other side of it, when after Whitaker, well, two things that I was really excited about. The first was when Whitaker lifts me off the floor and I push him. That just sort of happened, and I thought this is the perfect physical representation of how he feels. He accepts the help, but I don't, I don't want it. Uh, and then when he leaves the room, Simran Bedouin wrote episode 14 brilliantly, but I asked her to include very quickly an exchange between Robby and Esme, the social services worker, where he thanks her for the work that her team is doing. Because I said, when he leaves this room, he's going to be so self-conscious that the world could see him. He's going to want to put all of the attention on them. And the easiest way to get everybody's eye off of him is if he's praising them and focusing on them. So as I come out of that room, let that be the thing that I'm trying to do. And then Gloria, because she's been the thorn in his side, makes it impossible for him to do that. So 30 seconds later, he's screaming at her. But for that 30 seconds, he's really, really trying to be a good leader and keep his shit together. 14 is the magic trick of the season because the breakdown is 13 and 15. We'd shot the roof scene in September. So I know I'm going on the roof with Abbott and I know I'm going to go in the park and walk home with my earbuds in, but I have no idea how I'm going to get to the roof from the floor of the peds room. Nobody did. And so that was the magic trick of figuring out what other things we could do to get him to go up on that roof. And part of that, and it was, I just love the way that all laid itself out and worked great. The only thing add to it again in Simran's script was I pitched the Shema. I said this is a guy who has no faith, who when he's at the bottom of everything might revert to some basic, almost like nursery rhyme version of a prayer that he said with his grandmother, something that would comfort him in a very dark moment. And so I offered that up. We thought about doing the Kaddish, but the Kaddish is so long and it's so you have to know it to say it. And I didn't want him necessarily to be consciously knowing what he was saying. I just wanted it to be almost like a mantra coming out of him. But everything else was on the page. I don't know how he gets off the floor without Whitaker. I don't know who, and I don't, it was perfect that it was him because you want to have the young doctor whose first aid is on the job, who's so aspirational and open, who's had all these micro degradations thrown at him all day long in the form of bodily fluids and and he was sort of the butt of the joke, but he's the innocent. And to have him have to pull the veteran off the floor was just lovely, sort of balancing act. Dana could have gotten him up. Maybe Abbott, maybe McKay, maybe Collins. But you start to go down the list, and he has. And that's one of the things that's fun about playing season 2 is, this is a guy that can no longer look himself in the mirror and admit that he doesn't have a problem, but doctors don't always make the best patients. And how he goes about trying to get himself healthy is a big part of what we're trying to grapple with this season. I don't know. What else needs to be said about it? Well, it was it I could have done it all day. The well was very deep that day, and Damien Marcano, who directed it, I think felt a little guilty about putting me through the paces, and I kept saying, no, man, come on, let's do it again. So we didn't do many takes. It was very economically shot. We didn't really rehearse it extensively. It just Taj was a beautiful actor to play the scene with, and like I said, Nina Ruscio created an environment with those animals on the wall that was so disjointedly haunting and off-putting that it made my job extremely easy. The thesis gamble was, would this feel like an aggregate toll on a viewer the way that it feels on the characters? Will they identify with our fatigue and our sort of our fatigue? And that worked. I mean, it works if you watch it 1 hour at a time. And it works even more if you watch multiple episodes. But as an approach, I asked all the cast members to try to spend at least one day spending 15 hours on your feet, just to see what it feels like, and where do you start holding tension, and when does it start to creep in? When do you get hungry? When do you get hangry? If you're very clear-headed and can communicate clearly at certain times, when does that get harder for you? And those become the things you put into your scripts, so that you can show that aggregate toll. You got a little bounce in your stride in the beginning, maybe a gurney runs over your foot in hour 4, it turns into a little limp, but it gets more pronounced by hour 15. Those are the little, what I call fine brush strokes that you get to do with a show that only limits you to 15 hours. Instead of having this long arc, you're going to be doing extremely small detail work that will show in how you hold your shoulders and in the way that you listen, and if you wear glasses, are they starting to get on your leave depressions, all those little things that you can play with to show character advancement are fun. But in terms of the big swings, it's not a lot of time. We talked about it in the writing room. It's just enough time, 15 hours, to maybe fall in love, maybe fall out of love, maybe find faith, maybe lose faith, maybe discover that you have a talent for something, maybe discover you don't have a talent for something. So that was as much as we allowed all of these characters, and it was enough. Oh, he definitely had to go through it. I mean, this was sort of like it was coming. It's been coming for a while. It's been coming for the last 5 years. And who he will be on the other side of it will be absolutely, it will have been necessary for him to have gone through it for sure. Just like anybody, who needs to hit their rock bottom or do their inventory or process their trauma or seek some help, or admit that they're fallible or human. I don't think he's fully realized in season two. It's a process that, in success, hopefully will run several years and we can peel this onion very slowly, which will be very gratifying to watch, I think. But part of that is being realistic with where he would be 10 months later. He probably tried a therapist or two. He probably shot them down, intellectually sparred with them, tried to find fault with their methodology, come up with his own plan that he thinks will work just fine to keep everybody at bay, demonstrated from the leadership standpoint that he's going through the motions of using the resources available so that he can model that for the people under him, make sure that they do. But all of it is, what is he really letting in? What is really taking root? I think ignorance is bliss to a certain degree. When he goes into the work, like I said, he's a drowning man that doesn't know that he's drowning yet, and he, at the end of it, he recognizes the need for a life preserver. You know, uh, he's still got a long way to swim to shore, though. The fact that they were spread over so many categories was the thing that meant the most to me. I would, of course, have loved to have seen Nina Ruscio recognized for her brilliant set design. I would have loved to have seen Joanna Colejo recognized for her photography. And I would have loved to have seen our editors, in particular Mark Strand, nominated for his work, because our cinematography, our editing, and our set design is so much a part of what makes a show, a show you would nominate for best show. But those who know the quality of work that they're doing, and sometimes the most effortless and elegant work is the least obvious, and they now find themselves in a very long list of people who've done brilliant work and haven't not gotten recognized. That said, I'm extremely grateful for the ones we have received. For a freshman show to receive 13 nominations and to receive them in acting, writing, directing, casting, to have our sound department recognized as significant because they're a huge part of the tapestry of our show, is extremely gratifying. And maybe our makeup department, being singled out not just for the special effects makeup, but also for the non-special effects makeup. I would also think hair is a big part of that, but maybe next year. We have such a talented group of people. It's going to sound corny, but I have a little daily gratitude practice. And one of the things I say, and I have said for the last several years, is as a mantra, is please put me in the company of first-class artists with good hearts and minds doing meaningful work. And there was a moment last year where I looked around at everybody I was working with and everything we were doing, and I thought, oh my God, it came true. It really did. I'm working with first-class artists who have great hearts and great minds, and we're doing meaningful work. I couldn't be happier. Yes. In some ways, it means more, and in some ways it means less. And I don't know if I can articulate it except to say that trophies mean less to me at this stage in my life, but the recognition for my work at this stage in my life means more to me than it did when I was in my early 20s. Um, and I'll be even more honest and say it isn't that I didn't think that I deserved it back then, but I didn't deserve it back then. I was being nominated in the wake of a euphoria for a show that was commanding everybody's popular attention. And I was doing really good work, but I was being recognized in a category that, had venerable actors in it. And I felt always slightly out of place being nominated against people like Ray Walston or Gordon Clapp or Fiverr Finkel or whoever. Um, and I remember thinking at the time, I hope that I'm not front loading my career uh, with this, and that I have another chance. So in some ways, this next invitation to the party has been extremely gratifying. It was a heady time, and it was a lovely time, and perspective is a beautiful thing, and I didn't have it back then because I was in the middle of it. So on the other side of it, I can recognize what a special and singular period of time it was. So rare, a real lightning strike, and it wasn't that I didn't hope it would happen again or think it would happen again, but I'm just really thrilled that it did. A bit more, we're playing with it a little bit more than we did before. Obviously, you can only play with what you can play with in the workplace, but we're doing a little bit more to sort of talk about, because that's part of what makes him his pathology, right? Is his inability to make connections, whether it's romantic or fraternal or familial. He has some walls up, and dismantling those walls is what's the fun part of doing this. The writing on the show is trying to identify them and then assault them.
Well, especially because like you can't blame him, especially after season one. Like, I mean, he was denying that he was friends with Langdon, but I mean, he was as close to a work friend as I think he had in that place. And then you see
So you say, your words. I don't know. You're never gonna put me on record saying I'm friends with Langdon. I am. Robby can be petty. He can be petty, and forgiveness is sometimes harder for some than others. And yeah, betrayal is a big deal. Even yeah, like anybody that has walls up, if they let their wall down for you, and you are one of the few that get to share an intimacy, and then that turns into any kind of betrayal, the wall goes up twice as high as it was before. And that's what we're going to play with, probably. I think he was hoping that their shifts wouldn't overlap. And they do. Well, I don't want to give too much away. There's some really lovely things that we're going to be playing with that will be evident almost immediately in the way that we roll out in the first episode. So, but there's all I can say. Like I said, for the last 10 months, Robby's known he's had to get some help, and he hasn't liked anything that's been prescribed to him. He's come up with his own methodology that he thinks will work for him, and that's what he's going to try today. I don't. That's the kind of question I can't answer. I can't answer that.
Is there more than there was in season one? Are there more opportunities for him to smile than he may have even?
I think I've already smiled more in the first 4 episodes that we've shot than I smiled in the first 14 episodes that we shot last year. Yeah. Whether that smile is a mask or genuine will be up for interpretation, but I'm employing one.
What else can you tease about season two? Because like I mean, season one works so well, so it's kind of like you find like the balance of like introducing new elements, but also continuing what works, right?
That was the challenge. The challenge, and John Wells put it to us. He said, "We don't have to come back bigger, better, faster, funnier, more explosive, more dynamic. We just have to do it again." And we, I was so gratified to feel when we came back to shoot episode one that oof, right off the bat, it was like we were shooting episode 16. It was like we'd not left. Everybody, foreground, background, knew exactly what to do, except they were coming back excited and invested in a way that, because last year when we were finishing, the show was debuting. So now everybody knows what show we're on and are super excited to be here. And that showed to me in the enthusiasm and commitment right off the bat. And so I was thrilled to look at the first couple cuts and see we're just telling episodes 16 and 17 and 18, like we're just adding to the chain. These all feel of a family. We're adding a couple new characters this year. We have a new attending, and she's a formidable character and energy in our emergency department. We have some new medical students. And then, of course, Dana's always a good confidant for Robby. And he may have a new favorite he may have a new acolyte. Not to that degree. Not to that degree. But he's grappling with another big life decision, and there are going to be peaks and valleys in the season that really exemplify that. But this season also affords other characters an opportunity to move a little bit into that lane of primacy, which I think is healthy for the show's longevity and for the balance of the narrative. Like I said, last year was a wonderful Trojan horse to introduce this whole ensemble to the world and this arena. But it is much larger and much more and much richer than just Robby's character. And we're going to play a little bit with that this year, too.